Once the pandemic hit, I decided to get back into reading with a few of my friends. And that kind of spiraled out of control into this wonderful hobby that I now have. I've always loved reading. My mom is a published author, and we always had books in the house. This is not a new concept to me. I loved English class. I loved reading. But it really wasn't until the pandemic that I actually started to seek out stories to read. And I was a big gamer. I loved story-driven games, and of course I have a film degree. I just love stories. In 2020, I think I read about 80 books. 2021 was a very busy year for me. I think I only read 12. In 2022, I really wanted to hit at least 100. And once I hit 100, I moved it up to about 120. And once I saw that I was probably going to accomplish that fairly quickly, I bumped it up to 150. And then did it again. And I managed to somehow read 201 books in the year 2022. And I'm so excited. That's amazing. I'm very proud of myself. It feels like such a great accomplishment. However, it has kind of upped the ante for me, and now I feel almost inadequate in a way if I don't hit that goal ever again, which I guess I could, but I've only set my reading goal in 2023 to 150 books. And before I continue, I do apologize that I sound like this. After Christmas break, over our vacation and our holiday, I came down with some gross sinus infection and it's still lingering. I just actually need to take my last Z-Pack. And for Christmas, I actually got a new computer. I figured I would just record on this because the camera is 1080p and I don't feel like bringing out my clunky DSLR today, to be honest. Now, before we get started, I have to mention the HarperCollins union strike that is happening right now. Some of these books on this list are going to be part of HarperCollins in some way, shape, or form, and I have to explicitly tell you that I do support the union. If you go down to the description below, you will see ways to support this union as well. There is a way to donate. There is an email address where you can express your concern. They've been on strike since November 10th, and they plan to stay that way until they can reach an agreement. Now, it's very important to note if you have an existing contract at all with HarperCollins that is okay, but do not sign anything new with HarperCollins. And if you're able to post about this on social media, please do, and please voice your concerns. And if you stand with the union, please voice that as well. Again, everything is in the description below on ways to support that. Besides reading that many books, 76 of the 201 books were actually 5-star reads, making it the most I rated anything in that year. So it was just a great reading year. And I feel like I'm getting to that point in my reading journey where I'm not just seeking out books that may be interesting to me. I'm definitely seeking out books that I know are probably going to be 5-star reads. And also statistically, this is all from Storygraph, which is a wonderful app that I use to track my reading progress. I read more horror than anything, which is really interesting because I tried to read all horror in October, but I feel like I read a lot of sci-fi this past year, which is something else that I've discovered that I love. Sci-fi has become probably my favorite genre, and it's something that I now actively seek out. I'm hoping this year in 2023 to read The Expanse. I'm finishing up the Protectorate series by Megan E. O'Keefe, which I'm absolutely loving. I'm hoping to get into some more Adrian Tchaikovsky, too. I really want to start Children of Time in that series, and some of the other books that he's come out with. He's constantly putting out books. I still need to read Artemis by Andy Weir. I need to read Lindsay Ellis's books. There's just so many great sci-fi series. And unfortunately, when it does come to sci-fi, it's rare that you're going to find standalone books. So at least expect like a 2 to 3 at least book commitment, which is totally fine. When trying to narrow down my favorite books of the year, this took me days. At first I had a top 15 fiction and then a top 10 nonfiction. And I thought that was way too much. And at that point, I was just naming things that I rated 5 stars. This is everything that I rated 5 stars. So I figured, let me just try and at least make 10. Let me see if I can make 10. Let me see if I can combine them. I made 10. I wasn't satisfied with it. There was stuff that I was just leaving out that I absolutely loved, and it really left an impact on me this year. So I wound up with a top 13. So here we go. Here's my top 13. We'll start at 13 and go up. Now this is in order. This is stuff that I have ranked. Number 1 is my number 1, and number 2 is my number 2, and so on and so forth. So number 13 is Jackal by Aaron E. Adams. This is a debut, and I'm so mad about that because I just want so much more from this author. I listened to the audiobook, which I would highly recommend if you're able to. We get a couple of different perspectives, and some are very creepy, especially in the audiobook form where we have this wonderful female voice, and then this very ominous, dark male voice that is very intimidating and very scary. So we are following a woman named Liz, who is a black woman returning to her hometown, Johnston, Pennsylvania, for a wedding for one of her childhood friends. She doesn't really want to go there. She doesn't really want to see all these people, but it's her best friend getting married, so she pretty much has to go. She's obligated. Now, during the wedding, Liz is kind of tasked with watching the bride's daughter, Caroline. And unfortunately, while this happens, Caroline wanders off into the woods and goes missing. And this unfortunately is a pattern in this town. There have been other black girls who have gone missing in this woods, and nobody in the town really seems to care about it. There's this ominous paranormal aspect to this as well that was really, really well crafted. And I really love Adam's writing here. Again, I wish there was more from this author. I can't wait to see what she does next. And I really cannot recommend Jackal enough. There's a lot of really wonderful commentary in this book as well that a lot of us true crime people should be reading. We should be taking notes and listening to stuff like this. Coming in at number 12 is a book that I have raved about for a very long time on pretty much all my platforms, and I can't believe it made it down to the 12th spot, and it's not even near the top. But again, I just read so many good books this year. These Silent Woods by Kimmy Cunningham Grant. I remember seeing this recommended to me at my local bookstore in Davidson, North Carolina, and being intrigued by the cover. I thought the cover was absolutely beautiful, and I saw that it was like taking place in the Appalachian Mountains, which is nearby, so I was like, I love this. I didn't really want to pick it up though. I've been very wary of thrillers lately, and this, I guess, would be considered a thriller, but at the end of the day, it's really not. It's kind of more of a contemporary and just a wonderful story of a father and a daughter. But it did have some parts. I remember I listened to the audiobook with this as well, and I was listening to it late at night one time, and I actually had to stop because I was getting very, very uncomfortable and very spooked. We don't really get a whole lot of information right off the bat, but it seems that we are following a father named Cooper and his daughter Finch. And Finch is about 8 years old, and they live in this very remote cabin with like hardly any electricity, no cell phones or anything like that. They seem to be completely off the grid in the Appalachian Mountains in this cabin in the middle of nowhere, which you're kind of seeing on the cover of the book here. Finch seems to live a very sheltered life, and they don't like visitors coming by. So something is going on here, and it takes pretty much most of the book to kind of figure out what's going on, but it just unravels so well, and it's so well done, and I've recommended this book to pretty much everybody I know. There's actually a couple of Christian undertones to this as well, which is very interesting, and I didn't really expect that until I finished the book and kind of read some reviews and was like, oh, I guess I see that now. There are people bringing groceries to Cooper and Finch, which is just another strange element as to what is... Stop. I saw a lot of thriller book clubs picking up this book and kind of being disappointed because compared to like other thrillers that people may have read this year, this really doesn't stand out as a thriller. This is, again, more of a contemporary book with some suspenseful moments. I would highly recommend reading this on like vacation if you're able to, or if you're just curious about a thriller that's not super thrilling, but also has just a wonderful, wonderful story. A lot of the times, unfortunately, I feel like thrillers can feel a little cookie cutter and you're not really getting exactly what you're wanting out of it, but this just, again, unfolded very nicely. I completely understand that there's going to be a couple of books on this list that not everybody is going to vibe with, and number 11 is no exception to that. This is not a very ubiquitous book. Not a lot of people know what this is, but I just absolutely loved it. It just spoke to me in a way that it probably is not going to speak to everybody, but it was very morbid and I absolutely loved it. New Animal by Ella Baxter. This is such a strange story, and I just happened to see it again at a bookstore one day. I read the premise, threw it in my bag, did not look back because I knew I was going to love it. So we are following a woman named Amelia who works not a very traditional job. She's actually working for her family's mortuary business, but at the same time she's trying to explore herself sexually and figure out kind of what's going on with her life after being surrounded by death all the time. And if you know anything about me, yeah, you know I'm going to love this book. This book was great. And she does like her job. The mortuary job is fun to her. She enjoys it. She's with her family all the time. But again, it can get a little heavy. It can get a little morbid. She's trying to, I guess, distance herself just a little bit from her job, despite being very good at it. And then, unfortunately, someone in her family dies, and she is forced to be on that side of the mortuary desk where she's having to deal with everything that unfolds when a person dies and they have to go to the mortuary, and what exactly this person and her family wanted. And it was someone very close to her, so she's not coping with this very well. So she decides to track down somebody else in her family who has distanced themselves from the family almost entirely, and while she is there, starts finding BDSM sex clubs and trying to just explore her sexuality a little bit more, but at the same time try to fill voids that she is now finding in her own life. This one's very polarizing, but the end of this book is one of the best endings that I have ever read. It was so riveting and just I couldn't how this ended was just flawless, and I can't stop thinking about it, so it gets my number 11 spot. My number 10 spot is a ubiquitous book. You've probably seen it everywhere. I remember going to Barnes & Noble one day when they were having a sale, and two of the sales associates really tried to push this book onto me, which really turned me off at the time. I was like, I'm not interested. This is so strange. And then I went to an indie bookstore. I think I was near Raleigh, North Carolina at the time, and I saw it was there and it was signed, and another sales associate was like, you have to read this book. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll read this book. And I am so glad I did. Everybody loves this book. I'm seeing some negative reviews from my mutuals, but no worries at all. I understand why some people probably wouldn't like Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zephyr as much as I did. And I'm not going to say that this helps, but maybe it helped me. I love video games, and this is a huge aspect of this book, is video games. We're following two game developers, and I think this was just such a fascinating look into the industry when it was kind of starting in the late 90s, and we follow these friends kind of over time, and we're in a couple of different perspectives, but the way this was told was just so well crafted. And I know I'm going to keep saying that for these books. I mean, they are my favorites of the year, but Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow just really stood out to me as just unlike anything I've ever read. It's so gut-wrenching sad at times. I mean, I had to stop reading it for a little while. There are certain trigger warnings in this that I was not prepared for, because I typically don't look into trigger warnings too much until somebody tells me out front. But this one I kind of wish I had, so of course, trigger warnings abound. And again, we follow these friends from the moment that they become friends to the moment that they're thinking about making a video game together, to the moment when they do, to them trying to borrow more money, to them being interviewed by Kotaku for their massive success of a video game. It was just really well done. The friendship dynamic here, I really loved the way the author kind of sells it in her bio, where she says these two people often in love, but never lovers. And we see them be with other people, but the way that these two love each other was just really touching, and you could tell this was something special, and you could tell this was real. And when you have partners like this throughout your life, you're never going to forget them, even if you don't make a video game together. This was just, again, very well crafted. I cannot recommend this enough. It is worth the hype, and it is very sad, so be prepared for that. Number 9 is a book that I have not stopped thinking about since I put it down, and I actually got the chance to meet the author and tell her how much this book meant to me, and that is The Women Could Fly by Megan Giddings. This book just blew me away, and I think all women should 100% read this. This was such a fascinating story because not only was it incredible, but it really spoke to me being around the age range of our main character and seeing how this new government is kind of taking place. They say it's reminiscent, of course, of like the Handmaid's Tale and even Shirley Jackson, but this is just a wonderful dystopian story that is so realistic and scary because we kind of see this stuff already happening. And if you haven't read Lakewood by Megan Giddings, that's also a fantastic book. I really love what she writes. They have these very sci-fi dystopian feels to them that just make you uncomfy because this doesn't really feel like fiction a lot of the time. So there's actually a new state mandate, which is absolutely horrifying, that women have to be married by the age of 30. And if they're not, there are consequences to that. If you're not married by this time, you actually need to enroll in a registry, which completely gets rid of all of your bodily autonomy and any agency you think you have as a woman. So we're following Josephine, who is 28. She is not married and has no desire to be married or really have kids, which is pretty much blasphemous in this new government time, but think about it today. Her mother goes missing, and this is a world where witches are in fact real, and since her mother went missing, she has been deemed deceased, and people now see her mother as a witch, and since it is her mother, they see Josephine, or Jo, as a witch. It is so brilliant. It's so brilliant, and it really speaks again on the times that we are currently in, and pretty much always have been. You could put this piece in any part of history and it will fit in. It's so scary. It's so scary, but it's so well done. I'm so grateful that I got to meet Megan in person and tell her all of this and gush over her book, both of her books, and tell her how much I loved both of her books. And she was very touched, of course, but I'm worried I scared her a little bit because I was like, I'm 28 years old. I don't want to get married. I was like, oh my god, you wrote this book for me. And she's kind of like, oh my god, thank you. She was very sweet. I cannot wait for her next book, and if you have not read anything by Megan Giddings, you absolutely have to. Very, very well-crafted, wonderful stories. Number 8 is a strange one, because I did not have this even on my top 15 when I was making my list originally. But the more I sat here and thought about my favorite books of the year, I constantly had to remind myself, Which ones are you still thinking about? And this one my God, I haven't stopped thinking about it. And it's so weird because when I first was listening to it, I wasn't loving it. But once I saw it in a new light or a new lens and I stopped expecting it to be something that it wasn't, I wound up falling in love with The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. I've tried Tremblay before. I really have. I tried Cabin in the Woods, the Survivor Songbook that he came out with recently, and neither of them did anything for me. I DNF'd both of them. I wasn't liking them. But this book is really, really fascinating because it's labeled as a horror, but it is at times, but it's more so just a book about friends, and it's so well done that I just can't stop thinking about it. And I also listened to the audiobook of this. Z Sands actually voiced Barbara, which was just perfect because I love Z Sands and pretty much anything that she narrates, like Wanderers by Chuck Wendig. I really love her voice and I really love how she portrays characters. And I can visualize her just so well. So this really worked out for me. So we were following these two high schoolers, and actually we kind of follow them later on in life as well in the 1980s. We are following Art, who is a outsider and wants to start a club and make some friends. So he subsequently starts the Pallbearers Club, which is such a small fraction of this book that it's interesting, but he decides to start this club and has just a couple of loners show up to help him with people who have funerals but don't have anybody to be their pallbearers. This is such a strange club for Art, but it's kind of in his morbid fascination because he has pretty severe scoliosis and has to wear a back brace. And so it's very interesting that he chose this, but it works so well for the character. But what's really wonderful about this book, and I can probably pull it off the shelf to show you, is Art is actually writing a memoir about his time as a pallbearer in this Pallbearers Club. And the memoir is found by Barbara, who was part of his Pallbearers Club, and he seems to be writing about their relationship. And Barbara is very confused because things aren't adding up to what she remembers. But what's so brilliant about the way this is a very visual book, in my opinion, is here's the cover, the Pallbearers Club, and then she has written. So throughout the book, Barbara is actually taking notes in his memoir here. And then something that one of my mutuals, Kayla Books and Lala, pointed out was this is very well done as an audiobook because I feel like when you're reading this, it's easy to kind of skip ahead and maybe spoil some stuff for yourself. But Z Sands' voice is placed in between his thoughts in the memoir in the audiobook, so it's very well done. But yeah, you can see her writing in the margins here. We kind of figure out where we are by the end of the book, like why does Barbara have Art's memoir and what exactly happened. It's just such a strange book, and not everybody likes it because it's not what people think it is. And especially with other Tremblay books, they're expecting something much more intense and kind of jarring maybe, and very graphic or scary. But this is just about a guy who wanted to do something interesting with his life, which what he felt like would be for once, and started this club and made this friend. And it reads kind of like one of those very strange A24 films, very indie film feeling about just friends and the way he perceived the world, and she's getting to see it for the first time through his own words. And man, I really love this book, and it's just so strange that I'm not realizing until now during the year when I'm reflecting on my 2022 reads how much it touched me and how much I loved it. So this is one that I highly recommend, but just go into it similar to These Silent Woods. Go into it knowing that the genre that is plaqued on it may not be exactly what you're thinking, but it's going to be worth it. Coming in at number 7 is Disorientation by, I believe the author's name is Elaine Hsieh Chow. I watched a couple of videos to make sure I was saying that right, but if I'm still saying it wrong, please correct me in the comments. This is another debut. Very mad that it's a debut because, man, I want to just read everything this author has to say. Disorientation is, again, one of those books that I just happened to see at the local bookstore, decided to pick it up, and I have no regrets. This is a wonderful, wonderful book, and it speaks volumes on culture and racism and classism, and it's very, again, here's the word, drink every time, Patches says well crafted. And it's labeled as this Taiwanese American's coming of consciousness story, which is a very fascinating way to put this and very accurate. We are following 29-year-old PhD student Ingrid Yang, who is kind of over her dissertation, doesn't really know which way to go with it. She's kind of over it, but she also feels kind of stuck. She's getting a lot of pressure, of course, from her peers, her professors. People are telling her that she needs to do this, but she doesn't really have a connection with it anymore. She just doesn't care. She was doing her dissertation on a well-renowned poet, Jiawen Chao, who has recently passed away, and she's doing research one day when she realizes that there are strange notes in his archive papers, and she unfolds a mystery that is just absolutely mind-boggling, and she's able to unravel this person completely and kind of figure out who they were, what they were going for, but most importantly, who they were. But it says a lot about Ingrid and her history and her connection to her heritage and how much she really doesn't know about her own life or really racism towards herself. She doesn't really see it. She doesn't really understand it. She dates a white guy who actually is a Japanese translator and author, and he is very successful, and she's just kind of, again, coming to consciousness about the world around her. And a lot of these department heads in the Asian program at her college are white people, and it's very, very fascinating how, again, this is crafted, but this is very well thought out, very thought-provoking, and it's very fascinating to see how Chow did this. And again, I want more. I just want so much more from this author. The writing is very incredible. Ingrid is kind of an insufferable character, but she's very well done because she just seems so real, but you're just kind of going on this journey with her and figuring out about her as a person, and it's very well done. I highly recommend Disorientation, and I know a lot of people are really raving about it. I think it has almost a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. Cannot recommend this enough. You'll see a pattern here very similar to The Women Could Fly. The number 6 spot is In Defense of Witches, The Legacy of the Witch Hunts and Why Women Are Still on Trial by Mona Chollet. I believe that's how you say their name. This was recently translated, and it is a phenomenal book. Again, speaking to me as an unmarried woman with no children and no desire to do either of those things, to be honest. It goes into detail about just women throughout history and how they have been perceived when they don't do all the things that are expected of them, like getting married, having children, and aging. Those are the 3 main components of this book, and it is very well done. It's very scary. Again, it spoke to me similar to How the Women Could Fly, and, you know, as somebody who has no desire to get married, definitely no desire to have children, I will do everything in my power to never have children because I just don't want children, but also just aging and seeing how Hollywood even perceives women aging, like, oh, she has gray hair, she looks so old, but men who have gray hair are seen as silver foxes, and that kind of thing. It's really incredible, it's really sad, and it puts a perspective onto a lot of things that are overlooked at times. And not just people who, like myself, are deciding not to have children or deciding not to really get married unless it happens one day, but just people who aren't married and how we perceive them. It almost seems like they're a failure, or people who haven't had children yet. Even if they don't want to. There's always a perception on women, and it's again, you know, why women are still on trial. The blurb of the book, Mona Chollet is who wrote it, but Sophie R. Lewis is the translator, and this is by acclaimed French feminist of the witch as a symbol of female rebellion and independence in the face of misogyny and persecution. Definitely check this out if you haven't already. Continuing the nonfiction, my number 5 spot is Nightmare Fuel, The Science of Horror Films by Nina Nesseth. I listened to the audiobook one day going home from a trip, I can't remember what it was, and the whole time I just wish I had the book in front of me so I could make notes because this is such a fascinating book. I love horror films. I love horror films, and it was very interesting to see kind of why we love horror films and how the brain works and why jump scares work sometimes, and it's always so fascinating. You know, my dad saw Jaws at a very young age, and there's a portion of this book discussing a study that was done about people who did see Jaws at a young age and why they're terrified of the water now, and there's a certain percentage of people like my father, yes, who don't want to get in any form of water, any body of water, because they're worried about sharks underneath, even if it's a pool. Yeah, I really can't recommend this book enough. It was very fascinating, especially if you love horror movies. There's a lot of really wonderful books kind of dissecting horror movies and what we think of them, so I need to get to all of those. I did read another one this year called It Came from the Closet, which is queer reflections on horror that I really, really loved as well. I also have Men, Women, and Chainsaws next to me that I need to read. There's a lot of really great books kind of dissecting horror films, but Nightmare Fuel really stood out to me. I absolutely loved what Nina Nesseth did, and again, I can't recommend that enough. Number 4 is a book that I had picked up in Tennessee somewhere when I was working on a project, and I had seen it in a couple of different places, but I really hadn't seen anybody discuss it in great detail, so I picked it up just on a whim, and it sat on my shelves for a couple months, and I finally decided to pick it up one day. It's the only book on this list, I believe, that's not from this year. Everything else is a 2022 release, which is interesting. This came out in 2018, but it is Little Eyes by Samantha Schweblin. This was also recently translated. I think it was written a couple of years prior to 2018. But wow, what a wild book. I am so glad I picked it up. I couldn't believe how perfect this book was to me. It's absolutely wonderful. The very first line is quite jarring, if you would like to look it up. I don't know if I could say it on YouTube, but we are essentially following a couple of different characters in a couple of different countries, and there have been these new toys called Kentuckis, which are little Furby looking things, from what I could gather. That's what I was envisioning. They have these really big eyes, and they're really cute stuffed animals. However, the eyes are actually cameras. This book is so brilliant. The eyes are actually cameras, and with every Kentucky that you register in a database, it actually gets an owner on the camera side. So you are actually paired up with somebody. But the Kentuckis are there to kind of be assistants. So a lot of rich people have these Kentuckis. There are some people who buy them in bulk and have them, and there's some people who see it as like a best friend in the form of a Furby. And I keep using Furby, but that's just kind of it's a form of a stuffed animal. So there are people who are very close with their Kentuckis or their people, and then there's people that are being very bothered by their Kentuckis, because you gotta remember, somebody's watching you. This was a fantastic book, and unfortunately I've tried to read other Samantha Schweblin books in 2022, and none of them really spoke to me like this one did. I really haven't loved any of her other books, unfortunately, but this one was, oh my god, I couldn't stop thinking about it. There's certain scenes in this book, and I call them scenes because when I'm a very visual reader, I could see it as a movie as I'm reading it, but there are scenes in this book that just, I paused it because I was like, I didn't even think that could happen, but this is, oh my god, like, I want to tell you, if you haven't read this book yet, I'm going to put spoiler up, but there's a certain scene, and it's very, very short. We don't know who this person is, but we are in a certain city, and the owner dies, like the human dies, and his Kentucky jumps from the window, like it just kind of rolls off, and it was like such a jarring moment, because you're like, oh my god, like this person, I couldn't, like, he just destroyed himself as a Kentucky, but it was just so powerful. It was so well crafted. That part of the book just really, really stuck with me, and we didn't hear anything else about that character or what exactly was going on, and it was such a profound moment. And this book is going to sit with me for a very long time. I bought a couple of different versions of it so I can have the different covers, but I really cannot recommend Little Eyes enough. It's such a creepy, eerie, but great novel discussing society and eyes on everything. It's like an homage to social media almost, which is kind of how I interpreted it. Showing how ugly humanity can be and how connected we all are. Oh, it was so good. I really was shocked at how much I love this, and I was actually very upset that I did not pick it up sooner. It was just staring at me on my shelves for a very long time, and I just happened to pick it up on a whim in a bookstore in, where was I? Knoxville, Tennessee, I think. Really cute bookstore though, but really wonderful book. Cannot recommend it enough. And my number 3 spot is a book that I really don't even want to explain to you, and I think it would be best going into this completely blind. But number 3 is Leech by Hiron Ennis. This was a wild ride. If you think you know what's going on in this book, you really don't. You really don't. This is not what you think it's going to be. It takes a sci-fi turn kind of towards the end there, which in my number 1 book spot does as well. This was just written very well. One of the best things about this was the prose. I really love this author's writing. I think it was a debut, and I'm glad it was up for some awards there for a little while. I don't know if it won any, but I've tried screaming from the rooftops for people to read this book because it was so creepy. Again, I don't really know how to explain this to you without spoilers, so how do I do this? You're basically following what we would perceive as a physician. This is an unknown time period, but it is presumed to be, how do I do this? Far future, but feels like forever ago, but could be the far future as well. But a physician is sent out to this isolated chateau to check on a baron that has died. And things just, I mean, unravel completely from there. We are dealing with a parasite. We are dealing with paranormal things. We are dealing with apocalyptic horrors. There is just so much packed in this book, and it is so well done. If you could do the audiobook, highly recommend the audiobook. But again, if you can go in completely blind, I would highly recommend it. You will not be disappointed. Just expect things to get very, very weird. Number 2 is a book that I've already raved about on my YouTube channel. I absolutely loved Unmask Alice by Rick Emerson, LSD, The Satanic Panic, and The Imposter Behind the World's Most Notorious Diaries. Again, just happened to see this on, actually no, it was Book Talk. Somebody on Book Talk got an ARC copy of it, and they were like, this is incredible, you have to read this. So we wound up reading it for the Morbidly Curious Book Club, and I'm so happy to say that everybody pretty much loved it. You can actually watch our discussion here on the YouTube channel. I post all of our discussions, and I guess it's a good time to plug my book club. If you're not a member of the Morbidly Curious Book Club yet, well, what are you doing? The link is in my bio. It is such a fun time. We read only nonfiction books that are very, very morbid and curious. This fit very well with the theme. This was very well done by Rick Emerson. I actually got a chance to speak with the author a little bit over on Instagram, told him how much I loved the book. He was very grateful. He watched my review, which was really awesome. So if you would like to see all of my thoughts on Unmask Alice, the video is already here on YouTube, but this took my number 2 spot as one of the best books I read in 2022, and I want more people to read it because it was just absolutely incredible. And here we are coming in at the number 1 spot. I'm sure none of you are shocked since you haven't seen it on the list already. How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu was my favorite book of 2022. Again, also very ubiquitous, but very worth it. A lot of people have seen this on the shelves. A lot of people have seen people talking about it. It is 100% worth the hype. Very, very well done. I saw this on Book Talk. Somebody was raving about it, so I decided to pick it up at the library. Loved it. Wound up picking up my physical copy from one of my favorite bookstores in North Carolina, Foggy Pine over in Boone. And again, 100% worth the hype. Cannot recommend this book enough. This is definitely appealing to people. In the blurb specifically, they say if you like Cloud Atlas or Station 11, you're probably going to enjoy this book. And it is told in short succession, like short stories that are all connected in some way, shape, or form, but it is it acts like a short story collection, but it's all by one person. And the stories get very grim, very dark, very quick. We are following a pandemic, essentially, and we start in the year 2030 when a man is going to the Arctic Circle to go to an archaeological site where his daughter has recently kind of mysteriously died. And she was searching for something on this job and wound up finding this girl who seemed to be frozen in this Arctic Circle and was kind of preserving this plague that, after she thawed, would eventually wreak havoc on humanity. One of the first stories we follow in this book is a theme park specifically for sick children. And this roller coaster is basically to euthanize them. And it's right off the bat grim. Right off the bat, very grim. And we follow somebody also who is dead. We follow somebody who is a scientist and they're able to make a pig talk. And we just travel through generations all the way up until there's actually a spaceship that goes to space to help save some of the people who have survived this. It is a perfect book, in my opinion, and I have read Station 11. I liked it, but this one had such a bigger impact on me than anything else I've read in a very long time, and I genuinely cannot stop thinking about it. I want to reread it very soon. This book was perfect to me, and I try and tell everybody I know to read this. I do go in with a grain of salt at times and tell people like this, again, is very grim, this is very morbid, but it is very well done. I know not everybody wants to read a book about a pandemic, even 3 years after COVID, and COVID is still kind of lingering, so not everybody's going to like this book. I totally understand. It is kind of polarizing, and it is very off the wall, but if you are interested in books like Station 11, or if you are interested in reading books about a pandemic that are very well done, very well written, have really incredible characters, and it doesn't come up for air, and has a wonderful ending that is very similar to Leech in a way, where you're kind of shaking your head or scratching your head like, where did that come from? But that totally makes sense. You should read How High We Go in the Dark. So that is my top 13 books that I read in 2022. If you have read any of these, please let me know. Please put in the comments any books that you think I would enjoy that you read this past year. And let me know what you think about these. This is just so much fun. I love creating these wrap-ups. So thank you guys so much for being here. Next time I promise I won't be as ill. I've had to take coffee breaks and breath breaks. And again, if you would like to join my book club, the Morbidly Curious Book Club, the link is below. We would love to have you. In the month of January, we are actually reading All the Living and the Dead by Haley Campbell, which I'm very excited about. And thank you guys again so much. I will see you very soon. Bye!